Okay, we're live. Let me see if I can fix this to look different. There we go.
Okay.
We're live. This is Pej's Recovery Corner. We are a recovery podcast. We talk to many different types of people from all walks of life that are in the recovery process. When I say recovery, we're talking about addiction, alcoholism. We're talking about mental health. Today we have two very, 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 very special guests. They're dear friends of mine. They're the dynamic duo when it comes to, at least I think, in when it comes to recovery, these two really talk the talk and walk the walk. And I say that very confidently. Welcome to the corner, Brittany and Justin.
Morning.
Good morning.
Okay. So usually when it's just one guest, we delve into that person's past to see what where they were born, what their upbringing was, and then when they got into certain things in their lives, and then when they got out of those certain things. Today we're going to talk more about first of all, where are you both originally from? Ladies first.
Of course.
A little bit of everywhere. I was born in San Diego County, and when I was growing up, we bounced around a lot, kind of up and down Southern California, between Los Angeles and Temecula, and then Los Angeles, and then ultimately Temecula was where I stayed the longest.
Okay. And then, and Justin?
Yeah, I grew up pretty much in one place up in Northern California and in Southern Oregon. We bounced between those two places, way, way north California, like 30 minutes from the border up there, really isolated.
Okay. And then you two met? Okay. So what was your upbringing like? Like Brittany, was there siblings?
Yeah, I have 3 younger sisters and a younger brother. I'm the oldest. How much do you want me to go into? I had I grew up in a pretty traditional, my dad worked, my mom stayed home. They always knew that they wanted a lot of kids. When I was growing up, it was kind of I think we kind of have that in common. There was a lot of fend for yourself. I was constantly making up what my siblings and I were going to do for the day. And we would just take off and roam in the backyard and the house. And it was there were so many of us that I can't imagine trying to, my mom had 4 kids under the age of 9 at one point. So there was a lot of chaos. It was always very, very loud. What about you?
I grew up in, like I said, a really small place. A population 365 was the town. I was born up in Arcata, California, in Humboldt County. If anyone knows where that's at, obviously, it's famous for some things. Yeah. My stepfather worked for the Forest Service, and my mom was a teacher. So by all counts, sounds like a pretty normal, middle class upbringing. But we lived in a trailer on 7 acres in the middle of the woods with our closest neighbor 2 miles away, and we lived off the land. We gardened and raised animals, and I was by myself most of the time. We drove over an hour to get to school and back, and I had an older stepbrother who was always in trouble because my stepfather was abusive, and they had a lot of issues because of that. And I was by myself a lot. Yeah, so I just did that. That's about says it for most of my childhood.
Okay, and then Justin, you went on to college or university at a certain age. Did you graduate high school on time?
Oh yeah, I left home when I was 17 to after I graduated to go to college in Fresno. Went to Fresno State. Got my degree in English and my teaching credential in English, and went on to teach English and theater for about 15 years.
Okay, so that young, you already went to school to go away to school. That means it sounds like you were educated in your adolescence and probably even in your childhood.
I was a good student. Like I said, my mom was a teacher, and education was always pushed on us pretty hard. So even though there was abuse, there was, that element, which I, mistook for, I guess, when you're a kid, you normalize your situation. You think, I have a normal situation. I've got a good, good thing going here. And kids always complain about certain things, but it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized my situation was abnormal. When I got to college and realized how socially inept I was I had so much social anxiety that substances hadn't really been a thing for me in high school. I partied a couple times, but my father smoked weed in front of us nonstop all the time. That was just his thing. I watched him regulate his moods with one substance or another, depending on what he had decided on. That's the mood we'd get when he'd get home, and we'd have to deal with that. And I always preferred the weed, honestly. But when I got to college, I immediately went to drinking, immediately to just to comfort myself and to be able to make friends and meet people.
So I was going to ask that, like when you were growing up in high school, substances weren't really an issue, wasn't?
No, I partied a couple times. I'd have a beer here and there just to be with my friends. That if they were all drinking, I'd sip at a beer. But I hated beer. I didn't like it. I made myself like it in college and liked it real quick. And my second semester of college, I ended up with, I think, a 0.36 GPA. Because I just stopped going to school, started smoking weed and drinking, sleeping in, not going to class. That's the kind of the thing. And
did you say 0.36 or 3?
Yeah, 0.36. Yeah.
For a second, I was like 3.6 isn't that bad.
Oh no.
I mean, not in my world.
My first semester, I got around a 3.0, and then immediately just took a nosedive. And I don't know how I did that, even, to be honest. Classes were like, you had to only be there for the midterm and the final, and so I took that as a, great, I don't have to go to class, I'll just figure it out. It just didn't work out like that. So I had to figure things out. I went home for the summer after my first year to try and like collect myself. My mom moved me home and was like threatening. I went back. I was going to go transfer to Humboldt State, which probably would have been horrible for me.
When we talk about Humboldt, for those that don't know, it's a cultivation.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
weed.
Horticulture. Yeah, exactly. Weed horticulture.
Yeah.
A lot of growing. Things are growing there a lot.
Yeah, they grow well.
That's
northern. I do.
Yeah. Okay. So then, Brittany, what about you? Like growing up in your adolescence and high school days and things like that. Any experimenting with drugs, alcohol?
Almost none. When I was really young, my mom got pretty severely injured. She was in a gnarly freak accident in the attic of our house and ended up stepping through what she thought was like solid floor, and it wasn't, and was almost pretty immediately prescribed the gamut of painkillers. And I saw that. So I didn't even know very many people that used to that degree in high school. But I felt like I was dealing with this struggle of like not wanting people to know what was going on with my mom at the time. So I didn't partake. I think I drank, like I could count on one hand. I had one party at the end of my senior year, like a New Year's Eve party. And my, one of my parents was home, and I had invited all of my friends and a bunch of underclassmen. And like, if you had this color Solo cup, you were drinking. And if you didn't know there was alcohol at the party. Like, I was a nerd and I had nerdy friends. And it wasn't, I didn't try out the horticulture until I was almost 21. And then, yeah, it was pretty boring.
So it's fair to say that both of you two were kind of late bloomers.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
When it came to, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, like I said, from 17 on, I did take advantage of substances to deal with my mental health issues.
Right.
Until I found the one that really did it for me. in my 30s. Yeah.
And when I say late bloomers, usually like when you hear somebody's story in any kind of 12-step world or just in recovery as a whole, often you'll hear like I started when I was 12 years old. Like it may have been I raided my parents' wine cabinet or liquor cabinet or whatever. But okay, so you guys started pretty late on. Now, you both met each other in theater, correct?
Yep.
And that was where? Where was that? In
In
which
Temecula.
part? Temecula.
Yeah.
All right. And then during that time, what happened? Who wants to go first? Like, what happened? How did this
Well,
friendship?
I'll go ahead. We started seeing each other in an affair capacity. I was married with children, and unhappily so. I dealt with it poorly. I was afraid of not being around my kids, and so I did not leave. Instead, I fell in love and tried to figure out how it was going to make that work. I knew I wanted to leave. I didn't know how to do it, and I was I was weak. I was afraid. It was all fear that kept me from doing what I needed to do and being honest with the people that I ended up hurting the most. So that was kind of the beginning of my real emotional and mental sort of disintegration. Was my inability to face the hard things that I needed to in my life and be honest, and I wasn't. Even Brittany was a victim to that, because she was strung along for a long time with me being indecisive, or not even indecisive. It wasn't that I hadn't decided whether I wanted to be with her or my ex. It was that I was afraid of leaving. I was afraid of leaving my kids. I was afraid of hurting them. I was afraid of what the truth was going to do to their lives mostly. And by delaying, I just made it worse. So that's how it started. And we were in love, and we tried to make it work. Things blew up at some point, and our families got involved, and it got very ugly for us. We broke up. I thought I owed it to my family to give it one more shot, so I broke up with Brittany, and we went through a period that was really rough on us both, which I'm sure she'll address. And alcohol was really how I managed myself through that period, because going home and I was going to go back. I left teaching. I was going to go back to grad school, and so I spent that first year after applying to programs, going in interviews at Yale and Irvine and all these places that I would hope to get into as a professional stage designer. Decided to go to San Diego State. My ex-wife tried to be supportive, but when push came to shove, the amount of hours I was having to spend, I was given the first show of the year to design, and that meant I had to basically live at San Diego State for that period of time. And we lived in Lake Elsinore, so it was a horrible commute. And so the same issues that were there prior came back up, and I ended up leaving. So we started seeing each other again, and we got pregnant. And that ended, that was a sort of a push comes to shove, make a fucking decision kind of thing. Sorry for my language.
You don't have to watch your language. So let me ask this: when you guys started seeing each other again, was it an affair at this point? Because you said you were trying to make it work with.
Yeah, of course it was. It was the same. We went back into the same exact situation we were in before.
It was really interesting because we had found each other, fell in love. We were so afraid of this small town mindset. Like, I swear, 40% of the population was Mormon, and another 50% were just like mainstream Christian. It was very like small town gossipy environment that we were so afraid of that we ended up making such big problems for ourselves that we would go on to like keep being the talk of the small town. Like we could have just disappeared into obscurity. And we both tried to do that when we split up, and we both ended up living in the same different small town when we both ran away.
Yeah.
Like 30 minutes up the freeway, we were both like, I'm getting out of here, I'm starting over. And we ended up living closer to each other than we had
before
the first time around. Yeah. And yeah, it was only an affair for a very short period of time the second time around.
Yeah.
I don't know, that was kind of the end of my thought, but
yeah, at that point, it was, I had faced the fact that the issues that my ex-wife and I had prior that had allowed me to make those poor decisions were still present and were not going to go anywhere. We had gotten married when we were 20, met when we were 18. We had grown up together, but had really not grown together, if that makes sense. We kind of grew in different ways, and both tried really hard. No situation is a one-person thing. We just we both loved our kids very much, and that was it. I just realized I couldn't keep doing that the rest of my life. So
go ahead.
I think the thing that both of us did that seems in retrospect so cliche, but at the time we couldn't have seen it, was I wanted to be saved or have this like, this is going to save me, this is going to give me purpose moment relationship. And I think we both, I mean, obviously I love Justin very much. It's been about 15 years now, but I think that we both saw each other as another person. Like there's very much always been this, I felt like Justin was the first person who spoke the exact dialect of the exact same language that I did.
I could see that.
We don't even realize we're weird. But it was also like, so there was very much the relationship that we had and seeing him as a person, and then also completely using another human being that I wasn't looking at to try and fit that emptiness. I had kind of burned out after high school. I had gotten into an acting school that I didn't end up going to. And like, this was gonna be the thing. And when we got back together after the first time we had split up and had ruined and damaged so many people, and then found our way back to each other again. And then we had this like fresh start. It's a new place. It's not, nobody's breaking any rules. Like this is going to be
our moment.
Yeah. Now everything's going to be good. Like this is the solution. Now there's no obstacle. And spoiler alert, there were in fact obstacles, but that's what I think is so different about our relationship now in like its third incarnation is neither one of us came back looking for the other person to solve or fill something.
Yeah. Now we ended up that second time moving in together after I left. I had split custody of my children, so we had them half the week, and their mom had them half the week. So Brittany found herself, in her early 20s, pregnant with her first child, and basically stepmother to my three children, and it was a lot. And she had a really tough pregnancy, sick almost the entire 9 months. And
not almost
pretty much
every single day.
Every single day she threw up everywhere, and so that made it very tough. She was trying to, figure out who she was, and we were trying to establish our new relationship in, this new world that we were in. And, I had started teaching again, and but not in theater, and so I was commuting. I wasn't very happy with what I was doing.
What were you teaching? English?
I was teaching English, in a charter school in San Bernardino at first, and then I taught out in the desert, out in Hemet, and it just, as this was about the time after our daughter was born when things started to spin in the direction of substances to deal with. We both found ourselves in this place where, like, okay, we're where we want to be, and then there were all these new issues, and neither of us were happy, not with each other, but it was with ourselves. We had so many internal issues that we hadn't dealt with of our own from the past, etc., that we were left, reeling. And then there were all the new issues from the divorce, and split custody, and her new, bring her new responsibilities with my kids, and a brand new baby, and she developed an autoimmune disease. I mean, it was one thing after another.
Severe postpartum.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the perfect storm of every reason to get loaded.
Right.
You could think of.
And
is that okay? So when you say you started to go into the direction of substances,
yes.
I'll take this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go for
it. It took me years to recognize, and only in retrospect, that I had some very gnarly postpartum depression. And on top of that, I started this years-long journey of trying to get a diagnosis for my autoimmune disease. I'd had a very, very difficult pregnancy. I had been, like you said, I had a hyperemesis gravidum. So I threw up all day, every day I was in labor with her, still throwing up like the first 6 weeks of being pregnant. And my immune system never had time to recover. I left the hospital at my pre-baby weight 3 days after our baby was born because I was constantly so hard to keep food down. And I kind of went into shock. I had this 6-week-old baby. All of a sudden, I couldn't pick her up. My joints were so swollen and my hands were so locked up that I couldn't lift her. And
she couldn't walk up the stairs. We had to set up a bedroom in the living room.
Yeah. Living room, bedroom. When we had split up years before was the first time I had ever stolen some pills from the Friendly Family Medicine cabinet. And I had, at the time, my mom was seeing one of those doctors, most of whom aren't allowed to be doctors anymore. And there was an abundance of supply. And here I was years later, I was in pain and I was emotionally hurting. And I knew that I had gotten through the difficulty of our first breakup by numbing out. So I stole some pills, asked for some pills, got the doctor to give me some pills. And we didn't settle on a proper diagnosis until last month with my newest doctor, but it was very clear that it was one of a couple of issues, all of which I could convince the doctors I was seeing at the time to prescribe me painkillers for. So I started with the hard substances, and it very quickly developed into a problem. And Justin tried on multiple occasions to love me into stopping, to threaten me into stopping. But we were also trying to, together and separately, maintain this outward appearance of, oh, we're happy now, everything's good.
Got it all together. Yeah.
He was struggling with custody issues. There was a fear of, like, if I went to treatment. I remember we just talked about this recently. I was trying to detox myself at home in the first year of our little one's life, and I was so sick. And at that time, homie had never experienced opiate withdrawal, and I was sitting in the bathtub in the master bedroom, like crying, shaking, the whole nine. And he came in and he was so angry. You're being ridiculous. This is dramatic. the kids can't see you like this. Our families can't see you like this. You need to basically suck it up. And that got old really quickly. So if I want him to get off my back, hey, you should probably try these. You look like you have a headache and a backache and, a spiritual condition. And
Now, let me ask a question. You say he said to you, your families can't see you like this. Were your families okay with you guys at the time being a couple?
Mine was definitely not. My family, my mother, my sister, everyone had basically backed out. Half my family, hadn't, but were not a huge part of my life anyway. They lived far away. So no, my family was not really involved. Her family came around to it.
Yeah, at the time when I found out I was pregnant, like I was having everybody's first grandbaby, first niece, first great grandchild. And if anything, I actually very recently was having a conversation with my grandparents where my grandma said, when you were pregnant and right after you had the baby, it became pretty clear you were the problem. A family member had come and stayed with us. Justin had gone right back to work when our daughter was a couple days old, and family member had stayed with us a couple weeks before and a couple weeks after I had her. And my grandma said, oh, she came home and said, if they don't last, it's not because there's something wrong with Justin. Justin gets up every morning and gets ready and goes to work and comes home and gives equal quality time to each of the kids and
It's Brittany.
tries to do homework and makes dinner. Brittany's a shit show. Yeah.
Okay.
My family was at that point, they were pretty supportive. They wanted me to be right. On paper, everything looked like it was headed for disaster, but they wanted me to actually be having that life that I had fought and hurt people and lied for, and
Okay, so within the home, since Homie hadn't yet experienced opiate withdrawals and he came and he was frustrated, what happened then? What developed?
Well, I mean, I had been still managing my anxiety and depression, all that with alcohol. I'd come home and I'd drink a 6-pack, which doesn't. I mean, it's a lot for one on a work night. You know what I mean? It's. I don't want to downplay that. It was a lot, or a bottle of wine on my own, or Brittany didn't really drink, so it wasn't a thing. But that was what I was used to. And then I remember I had fought her on her things for so long on this. I'd come home and find milk jugs full of poppy seeds that she had made poppy seed tea to try and reduce the withdrawal symptoms.
Did you ever do that?
It sounds like a good experiment if you're on opiates.
It's a real lame. You got to go to the bargain bins at Food for Less and get the bulk.
Yeah, you can't do that anymore.
I don't think
you
they do that.
You can't buy
anymore.
bulk poppy seeds.
It sounds like kratom on steroids or some shit.
No, it's not. It's less. So then I found kratom. That was another thing that she,
I was a recreational pharmacist.
Yeah.
It sounds like it. So okay.
I was fighting her on that for the longest time, and then I hurt my back at one point, and doing not badly, but coming down the ladder, putting up Christmas lights, I think was where it was at. And I went to the emergency room one day after work because I was just having a hard time moving around. They gave me Percocet, and it's not that I had never tried them before. I think my first taste with opiates was when I had appendicitis back in way before we ever met, back in 2002, I think. I was still living up in the Central Valley, and I had an emergency appendectomy. They put me on Norcos, and I liked them way too much. But they stopped giving. I got them extended because I also got what's it called? Not chickenpox, but the shingles. I got shingles after I got my appendectomy, so I was able to extend the pain pills a little longer, and realized I liked them a lot. But then I didn't touch them again until this time, and I had I'd had a morphine pill here, a morphine pill there for a headache or a backache. She was letting me do a little taste test.
Just
here and there.
Morphine for your headache.
Yeah, just a 30 milligram morphine for your headache. I would get really bad, like migraine type headaches. And so it was, I rationalized it. Oh yeah, I can take something stronger than a Tylenol. But I didn't go midway. I went all the way. And then at this point, I got the Percocets, and I took 2 instead of 1. I took 3 instead of 2. The feeling I got from it was like an immediate release from the anxiety and depression that I had felt my entire adult life. And I was like,
Yeah.
shit. I tried about every mental health medication that a site could throw at me, and none of them worked. This worked immediately. It was from a doctor. It was in a prescription bottle. Why not?
Our names weren't on them, but
They were at first.
oh yeah, you're right.
They were at first. We were able to keep that going for a while, especially with Brittany's, autoimmune thing. But it was always a fight. It was always trying to outrun the withdrawal symptoms. And
there was this like brief, I don't want to say like golden period, but it felt like that at the time, where Justin wasn't stressed out. I wasn't stressed out. Like it felt like we both took this like really, really deep breath, and
right.
I wasn't in trouble for taking pills anymore. And we found this weird, like,
we met a common area.
But it was like for this, after all of these couple years of chaos, we both are abusing substances, but for like 1 minute, we both took this deep breath, and it was like, oh, I can see you. Like,
again, yeah.
There's my person that I fell in love with and was willing to make all these crazy choices for, a couple of years ago. Now, like I feel like I can almost picture like both of us standing in the middle of like a wildly spinning room. And then it was, oh, okay, there you are. And it became this, like, I didn't just want to get another prescription or break into name the person's medicine cabinet. For me, it was like, I wanted to see us. You. I wanted to relax. I wanted us to chill out and like have a night where it right. didn't feel like I've made this comment about him literally the entirety of the time I've known him, where like I can tell how intense his anxiety and emotions are by the way he breathes. He does this really big, like, saddest man in the world sigh when he's anxious. And I would hear that, and it was like, okay, I need to come up on some more meds. And so it almost, at the time, I would say it kind of kept us together, because we could have easily fallen apart for 1,000,005 reasons at that point.
Yes.
And maybe that would have been better in the long run. I don't know.
Thanks.
No, I just mean like at the time, it might have avoided the future that we had in store for us still.
Oh yeah, I can't do that. I have to just assume it was all supposed to happen.
Yeah, no, I believe that now. But I think, you still, sometimes you wonder, like, where was the falling off point? Where was the point where we could have taken a different path, like the Choose Your Own Adventure novel, where you had some choice still.
Mm-hmm.
But
it was definitely there.
Yeah, it was very quickly, though, after that point, that we lost control of ourselves, and the desperation surrounding our addiction took over everything.
Okay, so what direction did it start to go into? Did you guys get into heavier drugs?
Yeah. The pills became difficult to get. Okay. We were no longer able to get them from the easy places. Mm-hmm. And so we started going to the streets to find them. They were super expensive, and a cheaper option was heroin. And
black tar heroin, correct?
Yeah, correct.
Black tar heroin.
Yeah, this is pre-fentanyl. Pre-fentanyl on the streets, yes. Thankfully. And we.
Were you scared that you're resorting to?
Yeah. Absolutely. We had a big argument about it in beforehand when the subject came up. She knew of someone who messed with it. Thought she could figure out a way to get, that we could try it. All I knew of heroin was, what anyone knows of heroin before they are involved in the drug world is, you think needles, you think junkies on the corner, on the sidewalk, you think smoky jazz clubs. I don't know whatever you think about when you think of heroin. These horrible things. But
maybe 3 people in the world that think smoky jazz clubs.
Well, they traditionally, you read Burroughs Junkie, you'll know what I'm saying.
I get it.
So we rationalized that we would, get some and we would smoke it. We wouldn't use needles. We wouldn't do any of those things. What there was this, we rationalized it. It was the same thing that we were getting out of the pills. It was cheaper.
Plant medicine.
And we could taper ourselves off because we had already realized we needed to stop. Like it was out of hand, that our addiction had control over us because we had spent too many weekends where we were sick trying to get what we needed to be well. And
How long was this lasting?
Which one?
Resorting to the streets and getting heroin and smoking it. Did it become other things, or did it? Was it just? I mean, how long were you guys doing this? Because you knew. Here's the thing: you guys are saying that you knew that you needed to stop. You knew. I think
that's where I was going with it. Once heroin entered the picture, it was all bets were off. Like this fiction that we had created for ourselves that we were going to taper ourselves off of it was a joke, because as soon as we tasted that, our addiction got stronger and stronger. Just everything surrounding the preparation of the heroin and the this and that became part of our story. It became part of our addiction, and it just got worse.
It was a little under 2 years.
Yeah, before the end. Mm-hmm.
It was after our daughter's first birthday, and that chapter of our lives came to a shocking close. Exactly 30 days after her third birthday.
Right.
So.
And we, in that period of time, we tried the methadone clinics. We sort of tried Suboxone to get off of it. And then we
sort of tried Suboxone. Were you getting that on the streets too?
He went and got it from a doctor.
I went and got a prescription for it and never used it.
I used it a couple times. The first time I took it too early.
Here's my thing was,
I wouldn't wish that on anyone.
I knew I had to get sick before I could start taking it. And my thing was always I couldn't be sick in front of the kids. So I had to do it in the 4 days I didn't have them during the week. And then I was teaching, so I couldn't do it while I was teaching. So I would have to take a couple of days off I add it to a weekend and try and get through the worst of it before Monday. And so I always found a reason why it wasn't the right time.
Yeah, it was always like buying more black tar heroin was the damage control. Like it was it was the smoothest course. It was the most reasonable option. It was, it hasn't
to not blow up our life. We needed to stay well,
It hasn't been just under a decade, but addiction is still incredibly stigmatized now, but it was so much worse. The more so 10 years ago.
Right. And it was before the opiate epidemic had
opiate crisis wasn't a phrase.
It hadn't become a thing, a catchword yet.
So it was this really, really dark, dirty secret. Neither one of us, as far as I knew, I could go to some shithole clinic in Fontana and try and detox, or we could do it at home. And it was a really dark time.
Even the methadone situation was no good because we would go and dose at like 5 a.m. and but we realized within a couple of days we were on a taper program that wasn't enough to get us to the next morning. So we would do our dose, we would cop at the methadone clinic, and then save that for the afternoon when the methadone would start wearing off. So it was just a horrible circular. So now we're doing methadone and heroin.
That's the thing. No one I was never partying. I've never partied. I've been hungover one time in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was just trying to maintain normal. It was so quickly not fun.
Yeah.
Because I never chased the nod and all that. It was not about that. I felt normal when I was well. So I looked at it as like my ability to like maintain.
Right. So something went in a certain direction and you guys got into some trouble. Tell me about that.
Meth entered the picture. Guy we used to go by with had gotten some and said it had helped people kick opiates. And I was like, there's there's not much in the way of withdrawal symptoms from it. So you just use that instead. And that was the thing. It was sold to me that way. And so I thought, well, fuck it, let's try it.
I
and
was so angry.
and it was
I
cheap.
was so self-righteous for someone who is standing there holding their hand out for their daily dope cop, and he comes in and gives me my heroin, which is totally fine with me, and is a little bit wild-eyed and is like, okay, so I have a plan. Like, right, every meth user ever has a plan. But I was so angry, like, how dare you do that drug? That's a completely different situation. We're like, aside from the fact that we always knew one or two people that we could get drugs through, we didn't hang out with drug people. I didn't have friends. You didn't have friends. So
Yeah,
it
we
was
just hung
very
out
much
together.
like that's a different shady people kind of crowd. Breaking Bad was literally had just ended. Like, that was my understanding. And he was like, no, it's totally great. It's going to be great. It's fine. And it was not fine. But
No.
we purchased it to try and wean ourselves off of what we thought was the more addictive drug. And I was a 0 to psychosis kind of gal, like immediately. I don't need to be awake for 3 days. I like,
Yeah, her thoughts went
give me
immediate.
12 hours and I can tell you exactly what the government is doing right now to spy on us and ruin our moment. And like, I thought we had this crazy disease. I was constantly trying to pull things out of my skin. I became really convinced that I could get the nanoparticles from the disease out of the wall of our apartment with fire.
Sounds about right. That's the
That was a good time. We started a furniture refinishing business on the carpet of our living room. You know, we had all these pieces of furniture that were half done.
So many half-painted coffee tables.
Doing refinishes in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. with the sanders and shit. And our neighbors loved us.
Yes.
So yeah, and it got out of hand real quick. But within a couple months, I was already arrested for the first time.
Arrested for what?
Possession and paraphernalia. The cops were called for what do you call it? A welfare check one morning.
You answered the door and let them in the house.
We had been outside having a cigarette, and a neighbor had called saying that we had left our baby alone. She was sleeping in her crib. We didn't ever use in front of the kids at all, but we used in the house.
That was, by the way, I mean, we really fucked up and earned a lot of consequences and were completely neglectful, absentee, inebriated parents, if you could call us that. But that welfare check was strange. We lived in an apartment. We were outside of the apartment. She was maybe 15 feet away. We could look up into her room. But I mean, it has to have been obvious before then that the neighbors across the street do a lot of drugs and get into a lot of arguments. Right. And
yeah, we argued like never before on meth. It was ridiculous.
Oh yeah, the first couple of years was like separate prisons of silence and like not communicating about how miserable we were. The last couple months was every hateful thing I have ever thought or heard anyone else think about you. I'm going to scream at you at 3:30 in the morning.
That's that meth life, the meth mentality.
Meth rage.
Yeah. Because I've never been like that.
You become sleep deprived, malnourished,
aggressive.
So much anger, so dynamic.
Yeah,
demonic, right?
Horrible. So, it brings the devil out in your head.
For sure.
You just don't care anymore. A
lot of evil that surrounds it. So then, so you got arrested once, Justin, and then what happened?
A week later, I got arrested again for the same thing. That first time, I had no idea about the justice system or what the rules around cops were. I opened the door and let them come into the apartment, and they had their way with me.
This was during a time that when you're getting busted for paraphernalia or for the substance. This was during a time where it was a felony, and you were going to be.
Yes.
No.
No.
It was a misdemeanor.
Prop 47 had
already passed.
Oh, it just changed. Okay.
So so I got put in the drunk tank for 8 hours and released right just in time to start kicking. So I got picked up and went immediately to cop and get well. But the problem is at that first one is when the cops called CPS. Because our daughter was in the house, and they started turning things over and this, that, and found some foils and decided we were, we were endangering.
In the back bathroom behind a stack of towels. I mean, they really came in and tore the house apart to find what they were
with no
looking
warrant,
for.
I might add.
I mean, we invited them into the
I didn't
house,
invite them to
but,
search the house, but yeah, you're right.
All right, you two. Now, okay. So
I can't tell you how many times I said, "No, officer, get a warrant, walk away." Like, I felt like he just kept getting arrested because he would, like, we pulled up one night after going out to dinner and the cops pulled in behind us. And I turn around and he's like leaning on the car, letting them pat him down. And I'm like, all of the drugs are in your pocket. Why are you letting this man touch you?
No, it wasn't even that. It was second. That was the second arrest of about like a week later. We went out to eat and it was just the two of us. And the cop, you know, I didn't live in that world where I was trying to hide from cops. I had never lived like that before. So he asked me to look in my cigarettes and I said, sure. And in there, I had my meth and my heroin under the foil wrapper in there. And he knew exactly where to look because that, of course, was an obvious place. And I got arrested again.
I think I can relate to you, Justin, in the fact that I've been in 6 raids in my life, 2 that were in my own home.
So insane.
And I'm not saying that to show off or exaggerate, but usually when the cops show up, in my mind, I think, okay, the gig is up. Come on in. Do what you need to do. Like, what am I going to? They're the cops. Like, even if they don't have a warrant, they seem to be able to find their way in through probable cause or some shit.
Yeah.
So
I also operated. I think the harder I made it on them, the harder they were going to make it on me. You know, kind of thing. And I thought, you know, maybe this time they'll like let me go.
Sure.
Off. So I got.
So the second. So you had 2 crimes at this point, or 2 times that you've been arrested.
Yeah, both paraphernalia and possession for small amounts, and I went same gig each time. 8 hours in a drunk tank and a future court date for a misdemeanor.
Then what happened next?
We got to backtrack a little bit because that first day that he was arrested, we thought, I can only imagine what I looked like in retrospect. I thought I was pulling off this act of a lifetime for the police, where our daughter was home and they had called CPS and Justin was going to jail. And I thought, if I go to jail, you know, where is she going to go? And so I put on this really ridiculous show of trying to act like I had come home and found him using.
Right.
And for whatever reason, they told him after I left that they didn't believe me, but they let me leave with the CPS caseworker to go do an interview, and they took Justin to jail. And I got through that interview, and I swear to God, the fact that that lady believed me the first time is why she made so many things so difficult on us. I went in, I talked to her. My husband has a drug problem. My fiance at the time, my fiance has a drug problem. I need to get him some help. And this is what happened. And no, I'm not going to go home to him. And no, I'm not going to let him see the baby. And I was able to leave on my own accord. She drove me home and said, okay, have a good day. Pack your stuff. Don't come back to the apartment until it doesn't look like the police are going to come in at any time. And then he got arrested again, and he got arrested again. But in that time period, in that first window, I lied to CPS and told them I was going to go stay with my parents. And they called my parents, and we couldn't go back to our apartment. Now we were paranoid that the place was being watched, because why had they showed up the first time? And jumped to a couple of motels. And by the second or third day, my mom called me. I wasn't speaking to my family at the time, and said, I just want to see you and the baby and know that you guys are okay. Why don't you let her come stay with me while you figure out what you're going to do? I didn't know that they had been in communication with CPS. And I went and met her in this parking lot. I can still picture it like it's yesterday. I was trying to, while I was handing over the baby, convince her, but like, look, my apartment has toxic mold. I ordered this Petri dish. Let me show you. I'm not on drugs. And at that point, I would come to find out years later that this was not the case, and it was not true, and this was actually illegal. But as soon as I left, my parents and the caseworker said, you are not allowed to go back and get her. And after Justin had increasingly diminished custody, it went from us having the kids
Half-time.
4 or 5 more days out of the month than their mom did, to us having just Lottie most of the time, to our daughter, to we were alone. There was no reason to keep our voice down when we were fighting. There was no reason to only do enough drugs to get well, but not get loaded and be falling over. There was no reason to not pursue whatever crazy ass thing I had successfully convinced him the government was doing to us. Like, it just, everything ramped up. And at a certain point, I had already convinced myself I have fucked this up. This big fear that I had all of those days laying in bed with postpartum is coming true. I was never supposed to be anybody's mom. I've ruined every life I've ever touched. You are the only person that has stuck by me, and this is probably going to kill us. So I'm just going to keep doing it until it kills me. Like, it was a really dark, I'd wake up, he wouldn't be home. If he didn't come back in a couple of hours, I'd figure he was in jail again. But that switch was it went from, this is a temporary problem that we are going to eventually find our way out of, to
This is our life.
This is my life now. And
mind you, I was still teaching at the time.
Yeah.
I was still going to work, and
my God, on meth.
I was teaching in Moreno Valley at a continuation school at the time, and I would pull over in a neighborhood near school and get loaded before I'd go to class. I'd go out at lunch, and I would get well before I'd go back. And then I would
my
leave.
concealer to cover his pick marks before he left for work.
You were picking too, huh?
Yeah, on my way home.
I would pick him.
On my way home, our plug was on the one exit south of where I taught. It was perfect. So I'd meet him on my way home from school every day, and then head home to give her cut, and we would get well together. And it was just ugly, and that kept going for a while until it couldn't anymore. When I started getting arrested, I stopped going to work also, figuring I was going to get fired anyway. And then the third time I got arrested was I nodded out behind the wheel of my car and crashed into the back of somebody at a stoplight, walked away from the car on the phone, and then one of the cop that had arrested me the prior time, called me on my cell phone, had my personal number on lock, and said, "Hey, Justin, where you at? Your car's sitting here in the middle of the street, all totaled out." And so they gave me a hit and run. And then, but they let me ride out again. No, just a court date, like 2 months later.
He gave you an inspirational speech about kicking.
Yeah, give me a speech about getting through it. And then, I borrowed a car from a friend, and she was a teacher, and it was someone I had seen briefly when she and I had broken up for a period of time. And she lent me that vehicle. We took it to go to LA to do not good things, to try and come up so we could get well, because I was no longer getting a paycheck. And in the midst of that trip to LA, in the middle of the night, we got harassed by loss prevention folks at a Walmart in Moreno Valley, and ran away from the store.
Thought that was
the end of it. And then got a call from her at about 3 a.m. saying, "I need you to bring my car back now. The cops are here. They've told me everything." She had no idea I had a substance use problem, none of that. I said, "Look, I'm stuck in traffic. I'm on my way to LA. We got to do this thing." We had some dumb excuse about something. We were going to help family or something. And
at 3 a.m.
At 3 a.m. And I'll bring your car back this afternoon like we agreed. And we went, did what we needed to do, copped, and I brought the car back from Temecula after I dropped her off at a hotel. And when I pulled into the apartment complex at her place in Riverside, 3 Riverside PD pulled up, guns drawn, and took me into Presley lockup in Riverside. And I spent 6 days there. because it was a Friday night, so I had to wait.
Couldn't see the judge till Wednesday.
And I got arraigned. They OR'd me, my own, release on own recognizance, and I was given a court date again. But I kicked heroin in jail for 6 days, and it was horrible. Got beaten up for breaking the rules that I didn't even know existed. I had no idea what I was in for, because my arrests prior were all
Drunk tank.
That's not the same thing. I got put in general pop, and was immediately subjected to the rules of the woodpile, and that was the way it worked. And but they didn't tell me the rules, and I got in trouble for pushing a button to ask the cops to let me back in my cell after I showered because I was so sick. We weren't supposed to touch that button unless you were the key holder. You were not supposed to do that. And so the guy came in one morning. I heard my door open. Someone came in and started beating the shit out of me in my rack, and then walked out, shut the door, and said, "Don't touch that button anymore." Okay, so I learned. But they OR'd me a couple days later, and so I got out with a big scab above my eye. Basically through the worst of the withdrawals, and went and got high immediately.
Came home, and I
got home.
I was on the verge of insanity.
Yeah, on my way out. I was released at midnight in Riverside, downtown Riverside. I had $200 on my books, and she had tried to get me out, bailed out. They called my employer in Moreno Valley late at night, and they expected not to get anyone. They were going to use my employer as my backing for my bail. And some teacher answered and had known about me, what was going on, that I was no longer employed there, and that and so they denied my bail, and I got stuck in there. So I had $200 on my books. I got out with another guy who asked me for a ride. I said, "I can have the taxi drive you home." He said he would give me some Vicodin and a loaded Pookie if I gave him a ride home. He only lived a couple miles down the road from the jail. I said, "Shoot it."
Gas comes home high.
Shoot it. So
I'm dying.
So I had the taxi driver stop at a Jack in the Box. I went straight into the stall and got loaded, and then I popped the Norcos immediately. But I went in and used in the stall, and then got home, and she was curled up on the couch, kicking hard, in psychosis, and I had to wait till morning to help her out because I'd already used everything, except there was still some meth left in the pipe, which didn't help her, but she did anyway. It was ugly, and we got loaded again and started right back into it, and it was only 2 weeks, I think, before the big event, yeah, which was.
So before we get into the big event, I want you guys to know, and I'm going to say this anyway on the air. Usually the podcast takes an hour, but this morning when Brittany asked me,
sorry.
No, don't worry. This is all vital. Like, this is very important information that for this particular episode. Usually there's been times we've gone over an hour, depending on the guest. Now, I want to hear all this. I want it to be all on here because there's more to talk about. We haven't even gotten to the recovery yet. We're not even at the main event. But Brittany asked me this morning, how long does it usually last? I said it could be anywhere from 30 to 40 to 60 minutes, depending on you guys and the content. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to talk about the main event. I really want to hear about this main event because this is what really put you guys in the position of where you had to go next in life to hopefully have a wake-up call. So go ahead.
Sure. Okay. What was I saying?
Main event.
Well, we like I said, we fell back in just the same stuff. We were about to get evicted from our apartment, and I think we had extended it as long as we could. It was a Friday, and
the sheriff had come, and we had filed another paper, but it was going to be denied on Monday.
It was going to be Monday morning. It was Friday. My sister had gotten in touch with me and was trying to get me to go up to a Salvation Army up in Santa Maria. Had gotten it set up.
You were supposed to leave.
I was demanding that if I went into a program that they would allow me to still speak to my kids each day. And she had supposedly set that up with Salvation Army, but I know that's way against their policies. For a minute, there's a blackout period, so I don't know if that was ever true. It doesn't matter. She bought a train ticket. I was supposed to get on the train to take it up north, and but at the time, Brittany wasn't speaking to her family.
They had our daughter.
Our child was gone, And so if I had left her, she would have been on the streets as of Monday morning by herself, severely addicted to 2 horrible substances, and at the at the mercy of the assholes who we copped from. And I knew where their heads were at and where they would have gone with it. And so I asked my sister to find a place for her. She said she could not. And I said, then I cannot get on that train. And so my sister, who had gotten us phones, prepaid phones, immediately stopped paying for that, and said that she couldn't help me anymore if I wasn't willing to go get help. And the very next day, I had no car, had no job, had no money. We
No drugs.
were no drugs, and we were kicking. We were very high on meth, and we went to a Walmart. We were walking around aimlessly trying to find a way to come up with something that we could get well, and saw an opportunity to jump in a car. A lady had dropped her stuff off at her car to go put her cart away. I thought, maybe her keys were in there. Jumped in the front. Brittany kept walking, scared.
Yeah, I
didn't know what was going on exactly. And then the lady came running up when she saw me get in the car, and she had the keys in her hand. I grabbed them. I started the car. Another lady ran up trying to help, open the door. I closed the door. I'm trying to get the car started. The keys fell. It was a shit show.
pepper sprayed you.
She pepper sprayed me inside of the face. I shut the door again. I drove away, and we drove down to Oceanside because we had a connect down there that we were hoping to connect with. And we pulled onto the street at the college in the 74, wasn't it? Or 76?
You're skipping the whole.
What?
So.
Sorry. I'm a little blurry.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a better recollection. We were calling our normal guy Friday, who was right there in town. I had kept walking. I'm on the other side of the parking lot. I hear this woman. Respect for the mouth on this sweet tiny lady, because I hear motherfucker from across the parking lot, full volume, and screaming at him, swearing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. My phone rings, and he's like, "You've got to get in the car. You got to get in the car." And I'm like, "Where are you?" He tells me where he is. He pulls up in this car. Already, I'm like, this is very, very bad. Like, crowd gathering, people screaming. I get in the car. He had been very professionally pepper sprayed directly in the face. And we were on the 15 freeway driving towards San Diego from Marietta. And for whatever reason, the first exit was closed, under construction. The second exit was down to one lane, and the third one was backed up all the way to the second and third exit because of all of these. It's this very difficult. Memes have been made about it. Traffic thing into town. So he just keeps driving out of the county. I remember saying, we just left the county. This got worse. Like, being super aware that now we're really, really fleeing. And he was just pouring water down his face, coughing, choking. I'm trying to Google on this prepaid flip phone how to counteract the side effects of pepper spray. And like the first 100 answers, I pull up a Yahoo Answers page, and all of them are like, "Why, pervert?" So I'm not finding any information that's helping me. And finally I settle on milk. And as the answer, I remember it came up, my lawyer brought it up months later in court. We stopped at a gas station so that I could buy some milk and he could rinse out his eyes. And I'm trying to act supernatural because I don't want to give away that we're now in Oceanside, San Diego County, almost an hour away. So I'm like smiling at the clerk and trying to buy all this milk. And my lawyer later was like, "You seemed to be having a damn good time on the security footage at the 7-Eleven. Like, I looked like I had no remorse. It was said later. And I'm like, "You got to let me drive." at that point, like, this is who we are now. We are international criminals of, high drug crimes and thieves. And I wanted to try and go pick up our daughter. I don't care what we have to do. I want to go get her and I want to flee. I don't know where we were going. I don't know what the answer was, but in that moment, I was now in very far gone psychosis. Like, okay, now's the moment in the movie that, you flee and you start a new life. And, how do we get a hold of fake ID? To this day, I couldn't tell you how to get a hold of fake ID. And I did time with probably 1,000 people that produced them. But I was like, we need to find a fake ID and we need to get a disguise. And I want to go get our little girl and I want to leave and we have to never do these drugs again. Like all these crazy things. I'm driving. It was college.
In the 76.
College in the 76 going towards the 78.
Going toward the I-5, toward Oceanside.
We were in Oceanside going toward the ocean. I hung a left. I was going towards the 78.
Yeah.
I'm sitting at this light. I knew there was like a Walmart yonder. We had just been in a Walmart, but I wanted to go to a bigger one. And see a cop driving the opposite direction. I had been yelling from the minute I got in the car. I was like, this thing has low jack. And Justin was like, no, it doesn't. It's too old. And I'm like, it's a Mercedes. It has low jack. No, it doesn't. It's an old Mercedes. I see this cop going the opposite direction and I'm starting to panic and he's don't panic. And they turn around immediately at that light that we were driving through. And I'm trying to real casually just like turn into a neighborhood because they're behind me and they turn with me. And I turn again and they turn with me. And I'm already trying to like slow down, pull over. What do? We gotta.
I remember saying, if they follow us, we're done. Don't try and ditch them.
There was one moment as I was pulling over where we tried to figure out if I was going to floor it. I'm glad I didn't because before either one of us was even out of the car, there was probably 10 cop cars behind us.
With guns.
Yeah. So I'm driving and I do the whole driver, put your hands out the window, exit the vehicle, step backwards. They were gentler with me. He immediately tries to protect me and is like, I made her go. I kidnapped her. I had a weapon. Like, was immediately trying to take all of the blame. And I'm sitting there saying, please, like, stop yelling at the officers that you have a weapon. Like, no, he doesn't have a weapon. They separated us and put us in different squad cars. I asked them how they found us, and the guy's like, yeah, that car and that model is like the first car to get low jack. So like maybe a year older car. But we sat there in these squad cars on the side of the road for what felt like a million years. I felt like I was having a panic attack. I was having a panic attack. And at one point they opened my door and loosened my cuffs. And I guess the neighbor had called while we were gone. That same neighbor had called in another welfare check because they kept asking me if you had assaulted me that day.
It's really weird.
I still don't know where that came from, but they thought for a minute that I was a victim of domestic violence. And they brought out this couple, the woman whose car it was and her husband, and she identified Justin. They gave them their car back. And then the officers from our town get there to pick us up. Nobody's treating either one of us with any dignity anymore at that point because they were so sick of our shit. He was getting arrested on like a bi-weekly schedule, and I was always getting out of it, which I'm sure infuriated them. But what we didn't know that we would know later is that we were already on the news by the next day, like I think we made the latest news broadcast that night. By the next day, our mugshots were on the internet, on TV. The woman whose car we had was a senior citizen. So it was, I take complete and full responsibility for the gravity and seriousness of what happened. But a headline looks a lot more sensational than the already terrible story. So it was, myriad carjackers rob innocent grandmother. I mean, it looked really, really, it looked as bad as it was, and it looked a little bit worse.
Yeah. I had been a teacher. She was a lot younger than me and had been a student at that school. We had a history.
This Bonnie and Clyde story came up all over.
They wrote it up like I drove by the school and picked her up after class and went and got her loaded and then took her on a crime spree. I mean, that's really how the article was written in that way. There was no accuracy to the situation other than a few of the details, the date and the time.
People I hadn't seen since high school were giving stories about like I had always been a fuck up and a shit show and I came from a bad family. I mean, I read all the articles years later with my counselor in treatment, and it was really difficult because I didn't even see the one newspaper article that did make its way into both of our county jail tanks dorms, even though it wasn't supposed to. Had our faces and our pictures on it. Got Justin almost killed. But so we got taken in. We got questioned all night. I remember being handcuffed to this bar in the hallway, and they had split us up, and I was so grateful that like I wasn't going to still have my arm hooked to this bar, and they put us in different rooms and I was hooked to a different bar.
Yeah. And
at that point I was now also coming down, and I kept falling asleep, but I had to lay down with my arm over my head, and by the next day I had these really gnarly like burned in bruises in my wrists because I'd fall asleep, my arm would jerk against the handcuffs. We were at the county jail all night. At one point, I thought they were going to let me leave. They did not.
That was at the Myriad. They took us to Marietta PD first for questioning.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They took us to the Marietta Police Department. The officer that had known I was full of shit the first time you got arrested came on shift as they were getting ready to transport us, and they were talking about whether or not, I could hear them talking about whether or not they thought that I had been involved. And he came in and was like, "Oh, she's going to jail." Like immediately stuck his head in the room I was in, and it was that guy's best day all year.
Yeah, they figured it out. So at this point now, you guys both ended up getting charged and going to prison.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it was a journey just getting there. We were in county jail for 8 months, 6 months.
We were originally charged with like 17 things apiece.
My first offer was 16 years. I don't remember what hers was.
13. My bail was $500,000.
They sent us through drug court thinking, we thought for a minute we were going to get this outpatient drug program. That was a joke. They never intended to give us that. It was just a delay tactic. So I ended up in the ICU with a brain hemorrhage after the first week in county jail from getting beat up because of that article.
I got my face busted up because of that article.
It was ugly. And then, so yes, eventually we did a plea bargain in December of 15. Her for 3 years, me for 6 years and 4 months with 2 strikes. And some fraud stuff, and they added some stuff.
Bunch of petty junky shit.
And so I ended up in prison with a 6 year, 4 month prison sentence, and her with a 3.
Okay. So this is where we go into how I met you guys, right?
Yeah.
I know that Brittany Brittany was in prison for a while, I believe almost 3 years, correct?
So, yeah, about 2.5. Yeah.
So, and Justin was in prison doing time. I had no idea who you were, never heard of you, hadn't talked to you. Um, so I do, and I want to bring this up. I don't know if it matters or if you guys care, but I'm just going to throw it out there. I know that rabbis often will go in prisons and talk to individuals, and I don't know if that's for trying to convert to Judaism or not.
Oh.
Jews
It's
don't do that. We
but
don't.
they're there. They're assisting you. You guys were
they,
definitely
they are on there as well as a Christian.
Technically,
every religion is supposed to be
every
represented
religion. Yeah.
for the inmates that are there. They're already practicing.
Yeah.
So somehow, and
Yeah.
we won't even get into this because it'll. I know that
Okay.
Yeah.
I went to go. Brittany and I had a mutual friend that asked me to come speak at Beit Teshuva, which is a Jewish-based treatment center in the heart of Los Angeles, right? And so, and I love my Beit Teshuva family. I'd been there before, and this time I went there to go speak one night, and I spoke, and Brittany I just thought she was a client there. Maybe she was working there and partial client, whatever. But she was sitting, I think, next to me, and so that's where we first met. And
Yeah, I was the co-secretary, so I would have
co-secretary. Okay, yeah, yep. And that's where we first met. Now I think we stayed in communication because we still have that same mutual friend too. And then I don't know how much longer after that, but I at this almost simultaneously had conversations with Brittany about a man who she loved, who she had a kid with, that got in trouble, that's in prison. And then a lady called me, and the stories matched up. The lady that called me was about her son who was in prison, and he's not a bad guy. He just got caught up in some stuff, and he's educated, this, that, and the other. And at the time, I had a sober living, and it was for 40 and up people. And so as I'm talking to this lady, I almost immediately talked to Brittany afterwards, not knowing that we're talking about the same guy, right? And so, and Brittany, the way that she described you, Justin, and then the way that your mother described you too, and it matched up. I thought to myself, so what was really cool is that your mom. I asked your mom if I could start communicating with you through prison, and so you would write letters. And when your letters came to me, I was like, this guy's, of course he's an English teacher. I mean, his penmanship is just on point. And
best penmanship ever.
and who still writes in cursive? I mean, and so well written, to the point where, sometimes you read cursive, you don't really know some of the words are hard to make out, but yours were very readable, right? And it was excellent. And the way that you would write to me touched my heart, because I could tell that you were in there, and you had taken responsibility for what you'd done, and you were trying to change your life. And while you were in there, you were, if I'm not mistaken, going through some educational process to be able to work somewhere when you got out. And in that time too, Brittany and I often would talk, and we counted the days, and the days it was going to be a while before you came out, but definitely I think it was like a year and a half. And then afterwards you came to our sober living, and you lived there for a while, and you ended up becoming the house manager there. And Brittany and I, our friendship grew a lot too. Your friendship with me grew too. So I watched you come out, and we'll just spend the next 10 minutes talking about the personal struggles. And when I say personal struggles, I mean the fact that your families weren't fond of each other. Right. It's okay to say that, correct? Absolutely. And perhaps they still aren't. And that's neither here or there. But the thing is what you guys have gone through, the fact that you guys came and still wanted to be together, and you wanted to be there for your daughter that you both share, and that you wanted to even go as far as, being going on with your lives together in a mutual relationship. Do you want to talk about the struggles that you've gone through just a little bit, and talk about how much you've changed and why you do feel that you could be great parents, because I believe you could be great parents for her if she could be in your life more. And I'm not, and we didn't do this broadcast, we didn't do this podcast today so that we get people to see that. We're just talking about it because I'm sure there's plenty of other people out there that have gone through similar situations. So go for it.
I'll start for sure.
Go ahead.
When I was talking to you, when I reached out to you, it was my ex is getting out of prison. You know, he's really, really great. I will always have this love for him. And I had decided at that point, I had gone through Beit Teshuva. I ended up working there for years. And I wanted him to get something close to what I had. We had written, literally, I wasn't exaggerating, probably 2,500 letters back and forth in the years when I was incarcerated. And I was not even half as good at pretending to write as much after I got out, but we had split up. And you know, the world said, you guys were bad together. It was bad start to finish. Look at how it started. Look at all of the lack of morality in your decision making. Look at where you guys got to together. If you know, my family had adopted our daughter. If you want to be in her life, if you want to be in our lives, if you want any support, I was getting out of prison with nothing and no one except Beit Teshuva, who had
saved her.
I cannot stress enough that every single thing I have, from the computer I'm talking to you on to the person that I get to love, I have because of the lady that met me in Beit Teshuva, but or that met me in prison that was from Beit Teshuva. But you know, start over. And I tried to do that, and we didn't talk for almost a year after we broke up. I really horribly, with no sensitivity, broke up with him in like a phone call on Christmas Eve. And it was the first time in my life I was in therapy, and I just wanted to not make any more big mistakes for anyone that I loved. And when we did start talking again, and he was trying to figure out where to go when he got out, you know, it's not always so easy for someone who's coming out from a 6-year prison term with 2 violent strikes, find a beautiful, you know, Orange County sober living that will take him and not think he's going to be a problem. And Pej, you and I had connected at one point. My dad drives Uber and ended up with this like intoxicated girl who needed detox in his Uber for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night. I hadn't seen you since I met you at that meeting you spoke at, and called you like a year and a half later at 1 a.m, and you were like, sure, let me just make some calls. That girl had a bed in like 2 hours. So I was like, I can try to help you find somewhere to go. And I really, really thought that that's what it was at the time. And I wasn't going to go see him right away when he came out in the beginning. And then the closer it got, like, okay, I got to go see him. I really need to see him. Like, I'll probably try to see him that first week he's out, you know, for closure and for the moment. And then by the time he got out, it was like, Pej, is he there yet? Did he happen to get there yet? Is he safe? Is he alive? Like, how's his mom treating him? But the problem that I think the biggest thing was our life had frozen in this moment that other people told us this ends now 5 years before, like a peck on the mouth at intake in jail. And everyone in our life was saying, you know, that's done now. That relationship hadn't run its course. It hadn't, you know, every separation and barrier had felt like it was put on us by other people. But I was afraid of myself. I love this man so much that I will lay down and die next to him before I will leave him in the middle of a dark and twisty drug-fueled craze. You know, like, I'll get out and buy the milk and wash your eyes and drive the car. And I was so scared, and our world had been so small when we were using that. Obviously I ended up going to see him, and obviously we ended up still loving each other. And a lot of our getting back together, I was so afraid to sacrifice this independence. You know, he would call me and want to come over a second or third day in a row for dinner. And I'd be like, no, I have a life, and put up this big wall of, I can't give anything else up. You know, I have my routine and I have my structure and I have my ways that I keep myself off of substances. And if I change any of those things, I could fall apart again. And I struggled a lot with trying to integrate. And then I struggled with Justin trying to have boundaries. And
we kind of both flexed at different times, feeling uncomfortable, unsure, not wanting to upset the apple cart with our families. You know, all of those different issues were present.
Yeah, that was the thing, is I felt like all these people had given me all these ultimatums. And on the one hand, here I was like 5 years later, finally back in the family. Everybody loves me. Brittany's cured and fixed. Let's not talk about that again. But don't you dare love someone that you're not supposed to love. And I felt like I was put in this situation where I was honest to a disgusting fault and out of fear. And then now, like, I have to lie to you. Is what I felt like, because I wasn't willing to not listen to what I felt in my heart, but I was also afraid of losing my access to our child, losing my relationships with my sisters that were my entire world. And I'm going to let you talk, but same. So it created this need to just keep their eyes on us and know where we were and what we were doing so that we didn't endanger ourselves again, created this roadblock that, like, if we had all just been able to talk through it, it probably would have saved us some time and struggle and suffering and white knuckling through craving moments because of these big feelings. And that took us a couple of years to find the balance for that.
Yeah, we, that first year I was working and trying to avoid the thing that we both, wanted because of all these other outside issues. I had worked really hard while I was in to get my license with the state to do wastewater treatment. I was lucky enough to get put out there at the plant at the prison, and I got my experience. So I was able to get out and have a new career that would equate what I had been making as a teacher coming out of prison, which is unheard of, right? And so, but the first year I was not able to find work in Orange County. I was, living in your house, Pej, and then managing your house and working at the treatment center in Costa Mesa. And those were all really great experiences for me. And focusing on my sobriety is super important. And I struggled a lot through that year with a lot of different things. Mostly the continued rejection from my family and my children. I had expectations, which, we all learn in recovery is super unhealthy. Expecting certain behaviors from other people. And just had to get comfortable with the patience and knowing things would happen in God's time. But what did happen after that year was I was able to get hired with LA County at a big plant up here. And I'm making more money than I was making after 15 years of teaching now. And that's some really significant. That's significant to say after I will have been out for 3 years in September. 3 years or 4 years? 3 years. And it seems a lot longer. But I'm, after 3 years, I'm financially independent, and I'm deep in my recovery, and I have sponsees, and I've got people calling me for advice who are struggling with their own sobriety, and in my family, people that are important to me that took a chance to reach out to me because they didn't know what to do. And that feels good. It feels good to be that person instead of the one everyone's looking at and, with question marks. But we've lost a lot because of this. We don't, I think we both took a step back when I got out. We needed time to sort of look at each other and watch each other in each other's, individual lives, like who is this person now? Like, are they real with what they're doing? Are they true in their dedication to sobriety? And
do I like what this person looks like when they're sober?
Yeah, who is this person now? What after what we've been through? It goes without saying that an experience like prison changes you, but you don't know it yourself as much as others do. There are a lot of things that I've overcome since I've gotten out that I didn't even realize were there, but I've had to really work through. And she's been really great at being able to point those things out to me. I've been in therapy since almost the first month I was out.
Pej found you a therapist.
Pej found me a therapist. Taryn, she's been amazing. And then we've just worked through that stuff. Our families, though, are not not accepting of this. Thankfully,
not 100% across the board, but
no. Like, we've got support from some of our siblings, and but it's just been tough. I've had some mixed bag experiences with my children, but at this moment they're not really in my life a whole lot. I speak to my son, that's about it, but not really seeing them at all. And so it's it's a mixed bag, and those are the things that the continued struggle in recovery and post awful experiences and terrible things that we did. We both own completely what we did. We don't use our addiction as an excuse, but it is a reason why we did the things we did. It is a valid reason. It does not excuse the behavior, and it doesn't mean we are void of responsibility for it at all. It means we need to take responsibility for it, and we need to deal with the issue that put us there, which is our addiction. And that's what we've both done since the day we got out. We have been dedicated to trying to find peace for ourselves within this program and learn what it means to be sober in our own recoveries, but also giving back to others that are struggling, and also to have patience and leave space for the struggles our families are going through to figure out where they can place us now in their minds and hearts. And that's been probably the toughest part for both of us, I think, as far as our recoveries go, is being patient with those people that we love and care about the most, who have also, out of fear and out of self-protection, have done some things that have been really hurtful and tough to handle.
There's a couple things. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump right over you. A couple things that I think that we've done really, really well, and we do a million things terribly, on the average. But we both came to the middle place with our own idea of what staying clean and sober looked like for us. I can be codependent with this man all the live long day, but like I said, that previous world was so small, and that I could convince him that he felt the microchip fibers under his skin, and saying, when we first even started trying to connect as friends, we were going to 2 different programs and had a healthy banter about which program approach was going to keep which person, better in the long run. But we've kept those things separate. We both participate in a 12-step fellowship. Occasionally, if the mood strikes us, we'll go to a meeting together. It's very rare. I think it's 3 times ever.
Mostly we go
to separate meetings,
men's and women's meetings.
Do separate recovery-based things, and then come back to center and share what we've learned and what we're thinking based on that. I think we've done that really, really well. By all means, if I work in treatment, and if I send clients to meetings and they're like, well, I want to go to this meeting because that cute girl, is there, fine. If that's going to put you in the room, go there. But for us, it's been, this is my independent, private place to learn and grow. And I think that the other thing that we've done really well, and this is where like the codependency works for us, is I can't always see in myself the thing that I said to Justin 3 days ago. And when our daughter is mad at me and doesn't want me to come to her birthday because she told her friends I died in a tragic Mexican earthquake. She was super creative, by the way. Told her kindergarten class that mom and dad died in a tragic earthquake in Mexico. I can't see through that painful moment, and I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm wanting to blame the world. And Justin can step in for me and say, hey, we don't have control over other people's forgiveness timeline. All you can do is continue to show up no matter how, no matter what mood your relationship is in that moment, because that's what we learned how to do. And he can say that to me and a week later be heartbroken and outraged at not being included in a milestone in his children's lives. And, I can say, hey, we don't get to control when any of our kids want to come to our house. All we can control is what kind of environment they walk up to, and they're not ready right now. Mm-hmm. And I can hear it from him, because when he's saying it to me, it's someone that has loved me through all of the disgusting symptoms of opiate detox and a jail cell. And it's not the deep, dark sound of my own alcoholism telling me that I'm worthless and I earned this. And I think that we both can give that to each other. Like, there is nobody in the world that understands every single moment of the last decade of my life other than this guy. Like, I don't feel like we could have loved other people if we wanted to at this point.
There's also something to be said for knowing that, there's a lot of shared traumas surrounding the kids. And when she'll come back from visiting our daughter and be struggling,
he's not allowed to go.
I'm not allowed to see her. Yeah. We will connect silently on that, because we've decided and we've talked about, like, I can't really quench or give you relief in that moment. I don't have the tools to give you relief about our daughter and the things you're feeling, because I have my own. And so all I can do is say, I love you. I'm here for you. I understand.
I'll hurt next to you.
And we're going to hurt together right now. And like, at least that is something that we can offer one another through that. And then we have our tools and program, which we then have to lean on. And we've decided and talked about and been vocal about, look, we can't be each other for all things. It's not healthy for us. We need outside perspective. We can't just be sad together all the time. And so we do reach out our sponsors, friends within the program, et cetera, to get that that kind of support. Yeah. And I'm not always great at it. I very easily can fall back into that isolation mode that I grew up in, where I don't reach out to anyone. And
okay, so if my phone doesn't ring off, then I'm just going to keep calling you.
Yeah, please.
I told Pej like a week ago, hey, I need you to go check on Justin. He's having a hard day.
And he did. He texted me, and I told him I didn't want to bother him, and that's the trap I fall in for myself.
Yeah, forget about that. Not wanting to bother thing me. I get bothered enough every day. It's all good.
I know.
Well, with that said, I mean, this has been it's been really, really good to go deep and really see how it all happened. I want you guys to know, you both mean a lot to me. I love you both dearly. I think you're extremely talented. And I don't even think I know it. I know that, Brittany, you're a writer, and I believe you have a lot of stories within that head of yours. And
She's amazing.
I don't know if you ever want to write about this, but when I hear it, it is a hell of a story. I mean, it's like as you were going along, felt like I was watching a movie. I'm happy that you both got out of it, and I really admire the love that you have for each other, and that's okay. I think it's okay. I think
that's fine.
Okay. Like, especially, I understand the type of love you have for each other, and I couldn't imagine you with anybody else. So people are going to have to be okay with that, and if they're not, they're not. But thank you guys for coming on the podcast today. I love you all both very much.
Love you too.
Thank you for having us.
Justin worked the overnight, so it's time to go to bed in a little bit.
Yes,
Bedtime.
yes, sir.
Love you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Thanks to anybody that tuned in today or that ends up watching this or hearing it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Pej.
Bye.